Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at BT07, and BT07 gives us lots of good cards to work with on a budget. So today's deck I'm going to be covering is going to be a budget-friendly version of Green Hybrids. Well, Green Hybrids was already super budget-friendly before, but we have good tech and tools that could help make the deck even cheaper than a normal build, and it still has lots of different ways that you could build it even on a budget. So without further ado, onto the deck profile. Starting off with the Digitama, I'm going to be running one copy of Argomon because this could help gain some additional memory on our following turn if our level 3s that we're trying to aggress with actually survives, and we could use that one extra memory to make some very powerful plays with as a result. But speaking of being aggressive with our level 3s, I'm also going to be running 4 copies of Koromon as the main Digitama to basically help fix the top of our deck, so that way we could see the cards that we want and ditch the cards that we don't with this ability. Next, on to the level 3s, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Terriermon, which is going to be one of the most expensive cards in this deck, just because it's a really solid anti-meta card, trying to shut off the opponent's ability to gain memory on anything outside of their Tamers, so it forces them to be able to respond or have to respond to the Terriermon before they can make some of their more powerful plays possible. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Betamon as one of the deck's primary searching or digging tools, so that way we could try to add a green level 4 Digimon or a green Tamer from among them into our hand, which is just pretty good because it's helping us find our parts and pieces. Next, I'm going to be playing 4 copies of the Classic Collection version of Palmon. So this is actually a pretty underrated card and the one we're wanting to aggress with on top of our eggs more often than not, just because the on-delete ability could help suspend the opponent's Digimon down, and we definitely want to try to suspend the opponent's Digimon down to be able to beat them up, and the more ways that we have to do it, the better the deck can be at trying to control the field. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Betamon as the last rookie of the deck. So this is probably one of the most important cards in any hybrid-based deck, and this deck more specifically because it allows us to enable some of our combos. So not only is it actually acting as a solid digging tool itself by allowing us to look at the top 5 cards of our deck and adding basically a Digimon that's either a hybrid or 10 warrior and a Tamer from among them into our hand, which is really good because, again, we need to try to find our parts and pieces, and the main ability that we're looking to gain out of this outside of that digging potential is the fact that when we digivolve on top of one of our Tamers, then we get to gain 2 memory for that digivolution, so it makes it digivolving into our hybrids even easier and more efficient than it normally would be. And speaking of our hybrids, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Arbormon as just a base hybrid to use, just because he could digivolve on top of our Tamers as if it was a level 3 Digimon. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Beetlemon, just because Beetlemon is going to be another digging tool. Whether we're digivolving it on top of a Tamer or one of our level 3s, it doesn't necessarily matter. His when digivolving ability just allows us to look at the top 5 cards again and add a hybrid and a JP from among them into our hand, so he's just helping us dig out more of our parts and pieces. And then the powerhouse level 4 hybrid that we're going to be using is going to be 4 copies of Metal Kabuterimon to use in some various different ways. You're not really going to be using it to digivolve on top of our rookies for 3, which is a little bit expensive. Most of the time, we're going to digivolve it for 1 on top of one of our level 4s, because after we use our level 4, there's no real reason to keep that level 4 around, and we could use it as fodder for its when digivolving ability to be able to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon down with 6000 DP or less for just digivolving it on top of either our JP or a hybrid. And then as far as the level 5s go, I'm only going to be running 4 copies of Rhino Kabuterimon because it's the only level 5 we realistically need based on how I built this deck. So Rhino Kabuterimon we're using just because it's an efficient level 5 to go into, because most of the time when we're digivolving into this card, we're going to want to digivolve it from our hybrid, which digivolve from a Tamer, which means he's going to only cost 1 instead of 3, which just means that we could go into our higher stages with relatively quickly just because of this. On top of the fact that his when attacking ability also allows us to go into our level 6s rather easily and efficiently, just because if he did digivolve on top of a hybrid or an insectoid, then when he swings we get to digivolve into a 10 warriors or insectoid for only 3 memory. So the whole idea of this card is just trying to get up into our level 6s even more efficiently than the opponent might be expecting or anticipating. And then speaking of our level 6s, we have some really powerful level 6s that we could use in the deck. Again, I'm choosing to go the more ancient side just because of how I built this deck, and we have 2 very powerful ancients that we could be playing. So the first one is going to be 3 copies of AncientTroymon, because this is going to be the primary defensive card of the deck, with his ability to shut off the opponent's extra attacks, with the ability where when the opponent's Digimon attacks, we could suspend up to 2 of their Digimon without blocker, so it's just limiting and reducing the amount of attacks that they could have. Yes, the opponent could play around this ability, but not all decks are going to be able to play around this ability, on top of the fact that he is an ancient and he can replace himself when he dies with a level 4 or lower green hybrid, which is really good at trying to keep up the pressure. And then as far as the main offensive card of the deck, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Ancient Beetlemon as, well, the primary card we're going to want to attack with for our level 6s. So what he's doing is he allows us to burn the opponent's security for deleting one of the opponent's Digimon in battle with either a hybrid or a 10 warrior, which is the majority of what we're going to be deleting the opponent's Digimon with when we're attacking. So it just allows us to deal extra damage onto the opponent on top of anything else that we could have paired up with him. And then him being another ancient means that he can replace himself when he dies with a level 4 or lower green hybrid. As far as the options go, I'm going to be running for Thunder Laser as the primary suspend option to try to get the opponent's Digimon to be suspended so we could attack into them. It is probably the most efficient suspend option we have, but it does have the limitation where we do have to have a hybrid or 10 warriors in play in order to use this card, which isn't really a downside because the majority of this deck is hybrids and 10 warriors. And the reason why I'm running the Ancient package is also just because I'm going to be running 2 copies of Ancient Evolution to act as a pseudo level 5 to basically allow our level 4s to digivolve into a level 6 10 Warriors Digimon, which is what all of our level 6s currently are. And you can't really run a hybrid-based deck without some good Tamers, and we have some really solid Tamers that we could be using. So I'm going to be using 3 copies of Ken as the primary memory-fixing Tamer, so that way if our memory is ever less than 3, he'll just always hard set us to 3, so we can make some very powerful and efficient plays with, and on top of that, he also has a nice ability for when our green Digimon deletes an opponent's Digimon, we get to gain some additional memory for suspending the Tamer, so that way we can make even more efficient plays with it thanks to Ken. But the primary Tamer that we're going to be using to digivolve into our hybrids is going to be 4 copies of JP. So JP's native ability to reduce the Digivolution cost by 1 when we're digivolving him into a hybrid is really, really strong. So that way we can make very powerful combo plays with, and then on top of that he also has the nice inheritable ability of piercing, so that way we are actually going to be able to use our hybrids to be able to deal damage onto the opponent when we're deleting their Digimon as well. And then the last Tamer of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Izzy, just to try to make the act of suspending the opponent's Digimon a little bit more efficient. So he has the ability to gain us a memory when we suspend one of our opponent's Digimon down, so he basically can make Thunder Laser free. With Palmon, he could make Palmon give us an additional memory, and with Metal Kabuterimon, he could also make Metal Kabuterimon's evolution free, depending on what we're digivolving him on top of. So he's just a good Tamer to use overall, just because we have lots of different ways to suspend the opponent's Digimon down and gain some additional benefits from for being a cheap and efficient Tamer. So one of my favorite combo plays of this deck is to use JP and abuse JP and Bokomon. So we could use JP to reduce the evolution cost of digivolving into our level 4 by 1. So it essentially will cost 1 to digivolve into any of our level 4 hybrids, but if we have a Bokomon just sitting on the field, then we're actually going to be gaining 1 memory because it only costs 1 to digivolve into him, and then Bokomon's going to gain us 2 memory. So that way we could then digivolve into a Rhino Kabuterimon and swing with Rhino Kabuterimon to be able to digivolve into our Ancient all in 1 turn, making green very fast and very powerful of a deck to use. And then, as I mentioned before, there's still just a ton of different ways that we could build the deck depending on what you want to gain out of the deck. I understand that one of the more popular ways to play the deck is actually foregoing green eggs and going red eggs and splashing in a small red package. So if you wanted to run a red package, that's fine. We have some really good options to run there, with Gaussmon being a solid level 3 to try to limit the opponent's ability to reduce their own Digivolution costs. Then we also have Agumon as just a generic generic Tamer searcher, doesn't even matter what color we're searching for. And if we are just trying to search out cards, we also have Flamon to help search out our hybrids, and if we are running any red Tamers, then he could help search out our red Tamers as well, with the best red Tamer for a splash being the starter deck Taikamiya, so that way we can make our Digimon a little bit stronger than they normally would be if you want to go that direction. And the whole reason why we're even thinking about the red splash is because Atomic Inferno can help not only increase our damage output, but increase our Digimon's DP to be able to win against the mirror or the opponent's other ancients that we can't necessarily beat over because, well, we don't really have ways of DP boosting our own Digimon. But we actually do have ways to DP boost our own Digimon in the form of Hornbuster that's also acting as a really solid security threat as well. So that's also a route that you could go with it if you want to try to play a little bit more into the green side and be more aggressive with, because we're not looking to try to gain any DP out of our eggs. I mean, you could if you wanted to, but it's harder and slower to Digivolve up from egg to level 6 rather than hybrid to level 6. But we do have some really solid green level 3s that we could be working with to either help with that goal or to be more aggressive with. So we could forego the Koromon and run Terriermon's Assistant to use its Digiburst ability and some of our Digiburst eggs to be able to help with the deck's overall consistency. And speaking with helping with the deck's overall consistency, if you just want to try to help draw cards, then we also have the starter deck Tentomon to help accomplish that goal with. But if you do want to try to Digivolve from egg to 6, then we do have the Classic Collection Tentomon to help with our Insectoid synergy to accomplish this goal even easier than it normally would be. And we do have some really strong level 6 Insectoids that we could pair up with this, and we even have an alternative level 5 that's acting very similar to Rhino Kabuterimon. It's just a little bit weaker and a little bit slower. But we're still just trying to use this ability to be able to easily go up into our level 6s with when we're attacking with our Digimon, and unlike Rhino Kabuterimon, he actually does have an inheritable ability to try to help us gain some memory to subsidize our high evolution costs. But we still have some other hybrid-based cards that we could be running, so if we are trying to be aggressive with our Digimon and we're Digivolving off of our Tamers, then we want to try to reuse our Tamers and have easier ways to play our Tamers, and Nemon is the perfect card to help reuse and play our Tamers. Then we also have other hybrids that we could run just because green does have one of the more expansive hybrid packages just because it had some extra support versus some of the other colors. So we even have Beetlemon as a solid level 4 hybrid to just start swinging with. It is a little redundant with piercing from JP and it naturally having piercing, but it's still just a solid card to use nonetheless. Especially when one of our ancients dies, this is the perfect card to play. Then we do have some other really solid level 5s that could help with the deck's overall flow. So we have Blossomon and Argomon for that Digisorption to be able to go up into our higher stages with relatively easily. And we even have cards like Mega Kabuterimon from the starter deck to try to deal even more damage with its ability to burn the opponent's security when we delete the opponent's Digimon. Then we do have a whole slew of really solid utility level 6s that we could be using. So Argomon is a really good anti-meta card at trying to suspend the opponent's Tamers down and keep them suspended while he's around. So that way we could try to pick off the hybrids when they're forced to Digivolve into him, if they even want to do that. So he's a good anti-meta card there. And on top of that, we also have cards like Nidhoggmon to just be able to surprise the opponent with and kind of wipe their field if all of their Digimon are suspended. And even if they're not, he could help suspend some of them to be able to clean up the field. And we even have some other very powerful options that we have access to in the form of Hidden Potential Discovered. So Hidden Potential Discovered, we're using this card just to be able to go up into a free level 6. Then we also have Green Memory Boost as a solid memory boost to just help dig out the parts and pieces that we're looking for, on top of the Delay ability to gain some additional memory later. And we even have a slew of options to help suspend the opponent's Digimon down in the form of Needle Spray, Flower Cannon, Blasted Disaster, Dino Memory Boost. There's just a whole bunch of these cards, and Needle Spray and Thunder Laser are two of the better ones that we could use. And then as far as other Tamers go, Mimi is going to be the more expensive memory fixing Tamer of the two, but we're just looking to use them to help gain the memory, and Mimi is just adding some extra aggression, allowing us to turbo our raising area with. And then if we want to try to be cheeky and cute about it, we also could play Izzy and Mimi to not only be a solid duo tamer to gain some additional memory on top of our memory fixing tamer, so we could make even more powerful plays possible if the opponent has a suspended Digimon, but we could use this card to try to easily go up into our level 6 with right away in case we don't necessarily have one in our hand when we're swinging with our Rhino Kabu Terriermon. But for the most part, this is just my interpretation of a really solid green budget hybrid deck. So you're not necessarily sacrificing any additional power for going more budget friendly just because it's still going to be a powerful and efficient deck no matter which version you play it with. So as I stated before, there are just a whole bunch of different versions of the deck and each one has its own sets of pros and cons. As far as what you should be expecting out of paying for the deck, singles-wise, you could probably pick up the deck for about $20-25-ish, pending location and pending when you're actually buying it, because all of this is going to be as of the recording of this video. And if you're curious what my parameters for what I define as, in quotation marks, budget are, I'm using 3 very simple rules. The first one is no promos. The second one is no secret rares or supers. And then the third one is, as of the recording of this video, each card, with a few exceptions, must cost around $1 or less. So that's kind of the parameters on how I kind of decided to build this deck. And Green Hybrids was a very fun and interesting deck to build using these restrictions because, well, a lot of the cards already just fit naturally within those parameters. And Green Hybrids is just going to be a very strong and fun deck to be playing around with. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are a couple of different ways you could support me and the channel. So I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so when you use that link to buy cards off of TCG Player, then some of that money will go to supporting me and the channel. I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook, so when you buy a playmat with my design, then some of that money will also go to help supporting me and the channel. And on top of all of that, I do have a Twitch account over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, so giving me a follow and a subscription also helps support me there, and I do play Digimon on top of various other games on that platform as well. So thank you everyone for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.